All right, friends, welcome to Monday, June 28th. It is week 4, Monday for Python. We are talking about Django, and we are halfway. Congratulations. If you guys saw the This Week in Python email that I send every Monday, we are officially at the halfway point. And so now we're almost there. You guys can take your belt exam starting in 2 weeks, which is wild. So you're already there. We're just getting to the meat of Django. We are just starting that. And so that's really exciting. Before we get started, just a couple things for housekeeping. Discussion questions, as always, you have 2 discussion questions due this week. That's how we track attendance, and that is a mandatory thing. There's no way to make up those. So please just right after class, go and do your 2 this week. You have 3 options on the questions. If you do all 3, you don't get any sort of extra credit, but it's a great thing to do if you need, but you do just need a minimum of 2 to be in compliance there. Just want to let you guys know about assignments now. Quite a few of you guys, I think, have done like 6 out of 7 of the core assignments, which is putting you at 6%. Now you will receive an email that just says that it is an academic improvement plan. If you're on that, don't worry about it. It's not any sort of, you're failing, you're in trouble. It just means that you are between the 60 and 89%, which qualifies for that. But if you just didn't turn in one of the assignments last week, then you would automatically be there. That's okay. Don't worry about it. I would just try to do that assignment this week. Now, if you are on academic probation, there's only 2 people. But if that is the case, then yes, I've already emailed you and we should be having a conversation about where that is. But you guys have been doing an incredible job at discussing questions and assignments. So just want to say well done. Just so you guys know, this week, it is a pretty light week. Now, this is because it was pretty heavy last week. I don't want that one, I want this one. It was pretty heavy last week. We talked about a lot of stuff. Talked about some harder stuff. We introduced Ninja Gold. So this week, you actually only have 1 core assignment. That is going to be your users with templates. That's all you have for this week. And as you can notice, if we're looking at this, it's a little bit light these next 2 weeks. And then week 6 really just yeets itself into craziness. And you have 3 assignments due, and this is also belt week. So week 6 is your belt week. Now, I do just want to really, really kind of give you guys an understanding about what this looks like. Semi-restful TV shows validated, login and registration, and favorite books are all 3 heavy assignments that will take you a while. Why am I telling you that? Because this week is light. Next week is light. Don't wait until week 6 and try to start these. You will have all the information you need, except for login and registration. We'll probably cover that on Monday, but for semi-restful TV shows, get that started next week. Or validated, we'll be talking about validations maybe on Monday. But all I'm saying is this is a pretty heavy week, so make sure that you are working ahead as much as you can, and don't just wait to the end. Just as a reminder, in order for you to even attempt the exam for Python, you do have to be at the 90% of core assignments. So unless you have completed 90% of core assignments, actually can't even give you a belt exam code. So please make sure that you are just planning ahead for that. One thing I also want to put on your calendar, just kind of a thought for next week. I wish I could make this not even just a, not even just an optional assignment. I wish I could make this a core assignment, but I would say absolutely either do semi-restful TV shows or books/authors with templates. Books and authors with templates is one of my favorite assignments. I think that you should do that. That one and Dojos and Ninjas. This is what we call a one-to-many, which we're going to talk about on Wednesday. This is a one-to-many relationship, and this is a many-to-many relationship. And how we do that with the templates. These are going to be similar, not necessarily close to, but similar to what the belt exam is going to look like. That is what we are doing. We're talking about relationships and we're talking about templates. So I would really, really, really encourage you guys to think through, move ahead and think through Dojos and Ninjas with templates, and then books and authors with templates as well. Do that, do that, do that. I promise you, you will thank yourself for that. And then this week is just users with templates. You might see this shell thing. We're going to talk about that today, but that is basically if you are doing an assignment in the shell, All you have to do is copy the code from your terminal or your Git bash or command prompt, whatever you do, just copy the code, put that in a text file, and then submit that to us. Whew, okay, that was a lot of talking right there. We already talked about this week in Python. Give you guys a cool little article to read if you want just like cool code snippets to refactor your code, make it a little bit more efficient or more efficient. Maybe if you want to swap values within a list, there's a really, really easy way to do that in Python. So that's just at the end of the email, just in the fun reading. If there's anything you guys want to know, then I can try to find articles and put those in there. So just shoot me a message on that. Lastly, I just really want to talk about next week's schedule. As a reminder, we will not be having class on Monday. We will actually be doing kind of a two-parter. We're going to be doing lecture on Tuesday, just normal time, 5 o'clock, and then Wednesday. So we're going to be having 2 days of back-to-back lectures here. So just please keep that in mind. Yeah, so Monday it is a holiday. No instructors will be there. So I don't even think there's TA help. Sorry. I don't even think there's TA help. So just so you know, next Monday is considered a holiday for us. Mel, can you confirm if there's TA help or not? Do you know? Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, July 5th is optional, but I believe we try to have TAs even available during break. So.
Okay, so there might be TA help if you guys do need help. Also, if you guys are in Washington, I feel your pain. It is hot, hot, hot. If you need anything, please feel free to reach out. But I hope you guys are being able to stay cool. Washington or Oregon or any of those states affected. It is currently, I'm in a house with air conditioning and it's 80 degrees. So woof, if I sweat, don't judge me. Okay, that's all I have for just our housekeeping stuff. Now, we're going to be talking today, we're going to be talking about 3 kind of main important things. And like I was saying in the office hour, if you were able to make it, I will say today is a little bit more like crawling. Wednesday, we're going to be up, we're going to be walking, we're even going to have a slight jog. But today's going to be a little bit more like crawling. We're going to really lay the base for Wednesday. We're going to be talking about Django models. What is a model? How do we create one? What are attributes? And what do we do this making migrations idea? We're going to be diving into the shell and just kind of understanding things we can do within the shell, things with our what we call CRUD commands. And that's really going to be a focus for us today. And then lastly, we're going to, in the shell, we're going to make kind of like a full stack application. We're going to see how we can build something and then actually get it and show it on our HTML. So it should be a pretty fun class. We're going to be highlighting some of the stuff. And then we can go as deep in them as you guys need, as you feel for that. Cool. So we're going to be talking about really these next 4, let me come here. These 4 sections. We're going to talk about ORMs, models. We're going to touch on ORMs. We're going to really heavily talk about models, talk about migrations, and talk about shell, and then really dive into the CRUD commands. So I guess there's 5 things that we're going to be talking about. Does anybody know really what an object relational mapper is? Anybody have any sort of idea or just want to take a guess at that? All right, so that's fine. That's why we're here, right? That's what my job is for you guys. So Django is what we call an ORM, which is an object relational mapper. And I mean, it says right here, it allows us to write pure Python code, but we don't actually have to. We can integrate a database, but we don't have to write SQL language. Now, we've talked about how SQL is just its own language in itself, right? You can do these things called queries. And so basically in your database, if you want to look at specific information, you can, if you have a SQL database, write SQL code to retrieve some sort of information for your database. Now in Python, there's different things you can do, different frameworks you can do. And so let's say you're doing something in Flask. If you use Flask for Python, you will actually have to write some SQL code, right? There is an integration between them, but there is a way that you have to also understand how the SQL queries work. So if you can think back to when we did the MySQL portion, that second part when it was SQL queries, if you were to learn Flask, those are going to be wildly important. You're going to need to know how to make conditions and say, you know, go in here and retrieve all the users whose name are John, right? You're going to have to understand how to do that. Now with Django, one thing that's really amazing and why it's one of the most popular is that it'll actually do that for you. Django has built-in methods that somebody wrote in the background that basically says, when somebody says this, here's the SQL query that I want to run, which is really, really awesome. And so whenever we use Django, it actually creates its own database, right? Anytime we make migrations, you might see that it says DB SQLite, right? That is its own kind of lightweight database that comes associated with it called DB SQLite 3. And if you were to try to read it, you're not going to know what it says, right? But that is your database that Django is using. So anytime you are writing a method, it is writing the query in that database's language to retrieve and do some sort of information, which is really, really awesome. It's a really clutch thing to where you can actually do some really powerful things by just using a couple classes. And we're going to learn about those classes in the ORM CRUD commands. And so that is awesome. But as we talked about in our MySQL, in order for us to put something in our database, we use something called a model. First off, before I jump into models, are there any questions on ORMs? Cool. Okay, so we've talked about at the very beginning, I don't know if you guys remember, we talked about the MTV versus MVC structure, right? So MTV is models, views, and templates. That's what Django follows. We have our models, which we're going to talk about today. Templates is our HTML, as we know. That's our folder that shows what we see. And then our views, right, is where we do kind of our logic. Now there's another one you might hear, it's called MVC. Now that's like where a C# would be an MVC, like a strictly typed language. That is models views controller, and views are kind of swapped with templates. It's kind of confusing in that way because views and views act differently. But just so you know, Django is an MTV structured ORM. So it based off of views, which is where a lot of our logic goes, templates, which is where all of our HTML files go. And then we have our models. Now models is going to be just the base. You can think about it just like a class. Remember when we created classes, we said instead of creating, a human with a name and an age every single time, I can just have a person and I can pass the information I need. I can pass their name, their age, their information. A model is going to act the same way. And so here, talks a lot about the MTV versus MVC. That might be something as you move into different languages, as you move into a job, having an understanding of the MVC architecture. If you see basically a job posting, it might say MVC. I've seen that quite a few times, so like MVC or MTV. So just kind of familiarize yourself with what an MVC and an MTV architecture is, but basically that's the architecture of our ORM, Django. Now, the purpose of models is to do all the work of interfacing with the database, basically saying when we are creating a model in our database, Django models is basically the template that we're going to use, right? So that is saying, this is what I want. This is the criteria that I'm setting. Models is king there. Perfect. That's wrong. This should say skinny views and fat models. That's funny. They must have stolen that from Java. But there is a phrase that's skinny views and fat models, meaning that in our models is where we can use some sort of logic, and in our views is going to be a little bit lighter, but we'll get way to that a little bit later. We'll definitely get to that later. Now, I've already created a Django app, right? And so in my application, it by default comes with this models.py. Now, something I didn't do is set everything up. I did create my secret key, but I did not add my app. So let's go in and add that. Perfect. It's hot. Let's go to my URLs. Let's do include. This. Main.urls. Include. Perfect. Now let's go into my actual application. And let's say urls.py. Paste that. Get rid of that include. Sorry about this, friends. I should have had this prepared. For views, but it always helps to have something to continue to see how this is doing. Repetition will be key. Now let's go into my views. Create that dash index, place in a request. And then we're going to not do that. Perfect. I'm just gonna pass it for right now. Okay. So our project's all set up. Now we have this models piece right here. And this was already built by Django. Whenever we said Django or Python 3 manage.py start app, and then we said our app name, it automatically built this models.py. Now make sure that you do not change the name of this. It should always be models, plural, but do not change the name. This is a fixed place in Django that you have to have it as this name. Awesome. Now, like I said, it's just like our class. It actually is a class. And so the way we declare, what should we create today? Should we create, we did a taco truck, we did taco trucks last time. Ice cream truck, I like that. Ice cream truck, yeah, because it's super hot. What if we created like a, we'll just create a truck and we'll have a type part and then we can write in whatever type. I like this. So the way I create a class, so I'm gonna say class and I'm gonna say the name. Now, I know that there's a portion on the website in the actual MySQL part that says that this should be plural and lowercase, but that is incorrect, right? Whenever we create a class, we make it a singular type and we have it uppercase. Sorry, I just laughed at the tequila trolley. But whenever we name it, it is singular and it is uppercase. And then it also has this piece right here, which is models.model. Now this says what type of class this is. And it is a models with a lowercase m dot model. And there's some built-in stuff with Django. We'll see whenever we get to actual validations, the different things we can do. We have one called models.manager, and that's just a way we're going to use validations. But here this is saying, hey, this exact class is going to be a model within my database. Awesome. So we're creating this truck. And remember, whenever we create a model, it's something in our database that we want to repeat, right? We want to create multiple different trucks with different names, different style, how many wheels it has, the color, whatever it wants to do. They're all going to have these things in common, except their name might be different or something of that nature. So a couple things that it has. It's got this from Django.db import models, which comes by default, right? And so remember, Django.db is something built in, right? We can see that in our settings. And we're saying from that, I want to be able to use this models piece. Models.model is a built-in portion, but if I say models dot, you can see that there's a bunch of different things that we can do. I can do model, manager, some different things, but I'm just going to stick with model. Ooh, you don't like that. Yep, there we go. Cool. Now, this is us declaring our model, right? This is saying in my database, I will have a model called truck. That's it. Now, our truck has to have what we call attributes, and there's different types of attributes that Django will have, our ORM will have, that again will translate into SQL code. So here, sorry, I'm making sure that my air conditioner is on because it got real hot. So here, I am going to, on the left, I'll make this a little bit bigger. This is where I declare everything about my model. Anything I need it to be will go here. This will go within my database. So we want to make sure that we are cognitive and we're aware of what we're putting here. Now notice, just like we talked about whenever we did the MySQL portion, there's the created at and updated at. We're always adding those on our models. Those should always be there. Again, so we can know when was a user created, how long ago is their account, when's the last time they've updated their password, et cetera, et cetera. So let's go ahead and create our truck. So I'm gonna have probably a name, right? My truck should have some sort of name. Now, there are different types, and if you're on the Learn platform, you can see all the different fields that there are. There's a char field and a text field. If we're talking about strings, these are going to be the two big ones that we talk about, a char field and a text field. Does anybody know the difference between the two?
With the char field, you have to put in like how long it's going to be, so like a max length, and then the text field is just any text. It can be like a book
100%.
or anything.
Yeah, 100%. So your char field is one that is the user can enter whatever you want, but it does have one required parameter. You have to put a max length. So I think a name is a great one to do that. So if I say name equals models dot char field. Now, if you just fulfill it, it might have all this information. It always does this. Don't worry about this first portion, but you can see that there is a max length. Now I can make this whatever I want. If I wanted this to be 2, then I can do 2. If I wanted 250, I can do 250. Can anybody think of a reason why we would want to use a char field? Just like why would we ever want to limit my user?
Like a tweet, they don't want it to be too long and wordy, so they cut it down.
Yeah, that's a great one. Limit password
State
length.
abbreviations or something.
State abbreviations, you could do that. Yeah, I think Rick has a little more global perspective of it saves memory. Now remember, our company, this is our database. And whether I am on premise where I have servers and I have my own sort of database, or I'm using the cloud, I am paying for memory. I am paying for somebody to save information, right? And I'm paying for every single character that my user is putting in. Now, what if a user just wanted to cost us money, right? And put, let's say we had a text field for name, and they put the text of all 7 books of Harry Potter, right? That would take up a massive amount of memory. And so char field is a way that we can actually control a user's input and make sure that they actually don't, kind of over bloat our database with some sort of, off-putting information. Now, there might be times, right, in your database, you are actually saving something that is large, so you will use a text field. But we know for name, no, I don't know what the longest name in the world is, but I would bet it's not more than 150 characters, right? And so even then, even if we did 250, right, it is a way that we can prevent ourselves from having to store this massive amount of data, because for some reason, people do like to just go out and mess with people, like to just add in random stuff. So this char field is a way that we can really control and make sure we do have solid data, because data at the end of the day is money, right? Data about users is how Facebook is billions and billions and billions of dollars, or makes billions a year. So great job there. Cool. So here I've said my attribute name is going to be name, right? And then I'm saying, okay, this models.char field, this is part of the ORM. This is saying what type in my database is this going to be? and then it gives my max length. Now, if we were to look just like this, if we can remember our var char, I think somebody already said that in the, yeah, Mark, it is var char, right? Remember, Django writes that for us. So Django calls it a char field, but when it goes and writes its SQL code, it says, hey, just be prepared. I am giving you a var char. Yes, Django is the GOAT. It's awesome. So instead of you having to declare that, you can just say char field, and it will do this right here, this title var char 45, because that's the max length. In our example here, it would say var char of name is 50. So that is what Django is doing under the hood. Okay, so we've created a name. Maybe we have a slogan. How do you spell slogan? Like that? SLOGAN? I can pick the code, not type. Okay, now maybe that one, if we actually want it to be a text field. There we go. And just so you know, if you're ever wanting to know what parameters you can pass in, Django has great documentation. If you're like, oh, what is that underscore? Like Django has incredible documentation that you can go in and read kind of more in depth, and those are all linked, I believe, here. So if I were to right click, yeah. So this is the model reference for the text field, options, source. Perfect. Cool. So read more on these if you'd like, but we've decided that, okay, our slogan can be a text field. Maybe they have the world's longest slogan. I don't know, whatever. Now, let's say food type is going to be a models.char field. Now, one thing I was just doing right here is I was doing this, right? And it is blue. But when I go to make migrations, this will be an error because it is not this capital F right here. So please make sure that it is kind of correct and you know, if you have a error and you're like, I don't understand, make sure that you're looking and saying, okay, this is supposed to be capital, this is capital, this is supposed to be capital, this is capital. Basically, any new word is going to be capital here. And I also need a max length. Max. Maybe this will be 100. I don't know why. Let's do years of service. Now, if I'm looking at my different types I can do an integer field. Now notice integer field is just an integer, right? It's just a whole number. If you wanted to use a decimal, you can either do a float field or a decimal field. Now a decimal field is kind of like char field is to text area, right? Decimal field, you have two required parameters, the max digits and decimal places. So those are the two required for decimal field, but if you just want to send it like a float field, or if you want to send it with a decimal, you can just do a float field. Think of float field like text field, decimal field like char field. But we're just going to do an integer field because that's typically what you're going to be doing, especially for your integer field. For your belt exam, you won't necessarily need like a float or decimal field. Cool. So we've talked about that. Now I can also have a Boolean field, right? Which is just hold or true. Is it a fan favorite? Is it delicious? Boolean field, right? And then I've got a date time field. Now, anything else we should add to our food truck? Should I add a Boolean field, or do you think we should just send it like this? I'm going to call this not star rating. I'm actually going to make it a float field.
We created that and updated that.
We do need to create it at and update it at. Like that idea. Expensive equals dot Boolean field. Check that's right. Yep. Cool. So I've done that. And then yes, just like Bennett said, I also need a created at and an updated at. Now, these two, you can just copy paste because you will use them all often. They have two things. Now, they've got a date time field, auto now add equals true, and then a auto now equals true. What does that mean? Well, here, when I'm creating this attribute called created at, and it is a date time field. So know that there are two different types of field for dates, right? There's a date field, which just is that date. And there's a date time field. So there's a date and a timestamp as well. So here we want to have the date and when the user was created, right? Date time field is what you will use for your created at and updated at. Maybe, last 5 minutes. If we want to query for something with like the last 5 minutes, we can do that with a date time field. If it was just a date field, we wouldn't be able to do that. And what this is saying is this is a required argument that says, okay, when this is created, finally, like when this is created, that is the time I want you to do. Auto now add. So when this is initially created, I want you to add this and make that true. And then every time it's updated, every single time it's updated, I want it to be that date. This created at is a one-time thing. Once it's created, auto now add true, it does a timestamp and it's done. We don't overwrite that. Updated at, this auto now, right? It takes just the current one, but then the next time it's updated, it takes that current one and then replaces it, right? So in my database, it's just the most current timestamp that it takes. Cool, any questions on that? Any questions on attributes? It's pretty straightforward, right? We've talked about classes a lot. We've talked about attributes. Now I hope that you guys can see that we are starting to like dive in and piece some things together for this.
Will, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
So, can you go back to that the attributes here? So here also you added the Boolean field, and what's the difference between the auto now and the true you added? These are also Boolean, right?
Yes. Technically, this is a Boolean because this is either true or false. So technically, yes, but this is an entire field, right? So in my database, if I'm looking at this, I think there's a Boolean here. No, there's not. But in my database, Boolean field is saying I'm creating an attribute that its type is either true or false, right? So in my database, I've got an attribute that is a type Boolean, so it can only be true or false. What is happening here is just saying this is a parameter within my Boolean, or sorry, within my datetime field that I'm setting to true. So they are technically both Booleans, but this one is writing, or mine is actually writing and saying there's an attribute called expensive that is a Boolean field that it can only be true or false. And here we're just saying for this parameter, I want that to be true. Does that make sense? So they are very different.
Can I ask?
Yes, it does make sense. Thank you, Will.
Yeah, of course.
So it always will be true, right?
I'm sorry?
So it will always
auto
be
now. Yeah, this will always be true. So these are two of the things that if you wanted to create a user snippet, you totally could. But these will always be the same. So you can just honestly copy and paste them because they will always be the same. You're not going to change these.
Why is the created at auto now add and updated at auto now? Maybe I missed it and you explained it.
Yeah. So
I don't
when the
understand
created
the
at,
difference.
this is a one-time thing, right? So we're just saying, I want to add this, and this is a one-time thing when it was created at, and that's it. I'm not ever going to overwrite this. This one is saying, I want to overwrite and rewrite, like when you update something, it's just going to do the current time period.
Sorry.
This is saying, take the time when it's added, basically created, right? Take that time and add it to this datetime field. That's true. This one is just saying anytime I run or do something with this attribute, anytime I update basically this model, it's going to take that time and overwrite what currently was there. This is basically saying, we're going to do this one time, only on add. Do we do this auto now? So only whenever we add it to our database, are we going to grab the current time and put it there? This one is saying anytime we update, we're going to take the current time and paste it there. Does that make sense?
Got it. Yeah, so the add is really referring to when the user, when this add,
When
was
this model
or
is
the-
created.
Right, got it.
Yeah, upon creation of this instance of this model. So if I were to create a taco truck, when that taco truck is created, then this created at is going to do that. After that, it's not being created anymore, it's just being updated, right? It's just going to be changed. And so it's not going to grab that time and put it on the created at. Does that make sense?
Okay, and yeah, so that the operator exists in the add, and on the left side where we have created, when we're declaring created at, it's not actually, this doesn't do anything. It's just a variable, right?
Yes, yeah, this could be unicorn.
Okay.
That would be terrible for data, but yes.
Yes.
Yeah, these are
Got
just
it. Thank you.
arbitrary. Yeah, arbitrary names. It's this side right here. Cool. Any other questions? You guys are asking great questions.
Yes, I think I'm a little bit lost here. So the class of the truck is just like a table. All this and under this is just like the column. Which one is the primary field? How did it indicate it here?
I'm sorry, one more time.
Oh, okay, sorry. So so this class truck is like a table, right? Everything under this is attributes, which is columns.
Yeah, so this is the attribute of my model. Mhm.
Right. And then which one is the primary key here?
Oh, so whenever we create this, remember, we talked about it when we did the MySQL thing. When it is created, when we create our first one, by default, this is a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. By default, when we do this, the Django ORM will talk to it and create my ID for me. So I actually don't do anything with the ID. Once the instance is created, it automatically takes care of the ID.
So you don't have to indicate the ID in this.
Nope.
Either.
Nope. By default, anytime you create an instance of this class, it will auto-generate an ID.
Okay, I got it.
Great question, though. I'm really glad you asked that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I missed some of the context.
Yeah, that was in the when we did the MySQL, we kind of talked about how Django will do that for us, that we actually don't have to build it. But that was what, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So totally get that. But that is, yeah, Django will create the ID, and we'll see that here in a bit.
Yeah, I think it's a little different from a SQL because not every table has like an ID stuff. Some of them have like a composite key, right? So it's different.
Yeah, but this ID is what we will be using, and Django by default will create that for you. So here is a great Django automatically creates a field called ID to every class inheriting from models.model. So because our model says models.model, it will auto generate an ID, a numerical ID that auto increments. And as we talked about it, we don't replace. So if the second instance of my class that has an ID of 2, if we delete that, the next one's not going to get an ID of 2. It will just go to the next number, and 2 will never exist again.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So having an understanding of these is important because this is, models moving forward. You will have a model for everything. Everything we do will be in this. Perfect. I don't like that. It's too much. Okay. Now we have done that. We've created our model, but we have to link it together with my database. And this is where we do something called making migrations. So basically, I don't know if you guys remember, but when we did migrate to create session, right? Whenever in order to have access to session, we just migrated. Now what we're doing, is we're saying, okay, when we say Python 3 manage.py, and then we say make migrations, we are setting up our database, which we'll see here in just a second when I do it. We're setting up our database to make these migrations, kind of like in the same way whenever I did, git init, git add, git commit, right? And so we're setting it up. And then when I actually migrate, I say, okay, officially, I want you to make this table in my database. So let's actually go ahead and do that. So let's go into desktop, instruction, June, week 4, lecture 1. So here, sorry, I had to get my, I have everything going, right? I have my environment activated. So here, I'm in this, I can say, let's go look at the platform. So say, I can say Python manage.py, make migrations. So let's do exactly that. So let's say Python 3 manage.py, make migrations. Oh, I've got an error. From lecture 1, why? Try again. Oh, you guys are seeing all my typos. This is supposed to be models.model, not model, right? Notice that this is models. All right. Errors are a good learning thing. Okay, here we are. Try it again. Hey, all right. So I've made my migration. You can see that it says created model truck, right? Now, if I were to go into this migrations right here, you can see my first one. And it created in this migrations file, you can kind of go back. This is a way to see what you've created. I've created this name of truck, and the fields are, and you can notice I didn't put an ID, but it creates this field called ID. That is an auto field. Primary key equals true, serialized false for both name ID. But then also created everything I had. So name, slogan, food type, star rating, expensive, created at, updated at. So my migrations did that. So let's actually go and push that to my database. So now all I type here is Python 3 manage.py migrate. And what this is doing is this is saying, okay, go ahead and put it there, applied it all. And now because I see a bunch of OKs, now in my actual database for this Django project, this DB SQLite 3, this is what it will look like, just so you know. Let's just do this. This is what it looks like. We have no idea what it says, but just know that this is Django code. Not this necessarily, sorry, but there is Django code working in the background. And we know that it actually created my truck, right? In my database, if I look at my migrations, it created my truck. So now I have got a database with a model called truck that's got a name, a slogan, a food type, a star rating, expensive, created at, and updated at. Now, if I ever wanted to go back and edit this, I could, right? Let's say I wanted to add, what's something we could add to our food truck? Special, yeah. So if I said specialty, you guys have Seasonal specialty, am I missing an I? AL2Y, no? Okay, whatever. Oh, I did do this last week. Stop giving me hard words. If I say this is a char field, right, with a max length equals, say 75. Now, one thing I would encourage you guys, just as you are creating this, don't copy and paste. Like that would be my biggest encouragement. As you are beginning this, don't come here and come into this model and copy and paste this stuff. I know it sounds like trite, but type this stuff out because it is going to help you learn how to, it's going to make you learn like, okay, which one is a capital, which one's not, like, so it's going to help debugging. And I promise you will get to know the code more. So, I mean, other than create it out, update it out, I would say the first couple times, maybe write it, but then eventually you can copy paste because that's going to be true everywhere else. But get used to writing these because it will help you in the future. I promise you that. Okay. So we've created specialty. We've added that. Now, because that's happened, my model is now different, right? I have added something to it. So all I do is I say Python 3 manage.py. What do you guys think I'm going to put here? Yes, Jordan, exactly. Make migrations. Okay. So this is saying, I'm glad that we got this error. It's saying you're trying to add a non-nullable field specialty to truck without a default. We can't do that. Please select a fix. Now, the reason this is happening is because I have nothing in my database, haven't created any trucks, but right, I'm trying to add a new field. And what it's saying is, hey, your data is going to be messed up because you now added a field. And if there is something in my database, it's now going to exist without that field. And specialty, I didn't say null equals true, meaning that it's okay if it's empty. So it's saying there's two things we can do. Either I can do a one-off default now, meaning I can do a one-off, I just type like non-existent, and then now any model that was previously within my database that doesn't have specialty will have a new row of specialty called non-existent. And so I could even query the ones that were in my database without that. Or the other one is I could quit, and this is a little bit lengthier, but I could do number 2 and I could quit. I can add a default model, a default in models.py, meaning that I can say, hey, if it's not, let's just say non-existent. I'm just going to say 1. And then I can do some stuff right here. So if we're looking, that actually goes through this entire thing. I think right. Where is it? Oh, it's in migrations. Cool. So it goes through this entire thing. I went through it right here. Sorry, I just read it. I literally just read it. Make migration. Shit, no, it wasn't ORMs. Help. Sorry, friends. I literally just read it. I don't know where I read it though. Y models, other fields. We haven't even talked about migrations yet. And I just read it. Oh, altering models after creation. That's what it was. So this is a little bit more advanced, but here's what we can do is I can just say number 1, option 1, and this is the altering models after creation. I can actually just type in a string that basically says, because it's a char field, I know that it's a string. If it's an integer field, I would put it as a number, but I can just basically say non-existent Is it an ENT or ANT? ENT, right? Exist int. So what this is saying is now for any model in my database that didn't, that existed before specialty did, it's going to have a attribute called specialty and its value is just going to be non-existent, meaning it was before, there's nothing we can do. We can't retroactively do that. So now when I pressed enter, it said added field specialty to truck. If I go look at my code, all right, and I go to my migrations. Now, not only do I have this one, but I have this two, where it just says model name, truck, specialty, fields, char field, default. All right, this is what that built-in default. If I wanted to do this, I totally could have, but because I just did the one, it's saying by default, if it doesn't already exist there, it's just going to say non-existent. Then lastly, I will do my migrate. And now my database has that there. Does that make sense of what I was just doing? Any questions on migrations as we approach 6 o'clock?
So Python made a second class for the newly added field because it wasn't there before.
Not a class. So basically in my table, right? I got this table right here. So when I first created, let me make this larger. When I first created, let's say I created, is my year one, and just it's beginning of my application. It's an app for food trucks, let's say. And this is what my database has. It's got a table for food trucks. That's got an ID. We know that it builds that for us. It's got a name. It's got everything that we put. Well, after year one, let's say I wanted to add a specialty, but I already have, let's say 50 trucks in my database. Well, what it does is it goes and says, okay, I am going to write and create a new attribute called specialty on my truck model. But you already have 50 trucks that are in my database that specialty was not an attribute when they were created. So what it's asking is, this has to have a value unless there's a way that you can do it to where it equals null equals true, meaning it's okay if it's empty, right? That's another way to handle that. Let's see. This null equals true. If I wanted to do that, I could do that, right? That is saying it's okay if it's empty, just whatever. But what was just happening is it's saying there's a model in my database. You have trucks that don't have specialty when it was created. Specialty wasn't a thing. What do you want me to do? And so what I said is, well, I know that specialty is a char field, right? And so because I know that it has to be a string. And so I said, when you come and whenever you rewrite my model, not rewrite, but like add this to the ones that exist that didn't already have that, I just want you to put its value is non-existent, meaning those 50 trucks that were already in my database will still be there. But now they're going to have an attribute called specialty and its value is going to be non-existent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but that non-existent isn't going to be something that's displayed and they won't have like on their profile or whatever. It's not necessarily going to show up. Their specialty is non-existent. It's not going to be a text. The non-existent text doesn't.
Yeah, if I wanted to retrieve specialty, then initially it would, yes. Now there's ways, and we're going to get to it, where I could then rewrite it, right? What I would do from an actual company standpoint would be like, hey, we're redoing some stuff. Will you fill out these new things, right? And so specialty, and I would get the information before I just said non-existent. But yes, in this case, if I were to pull, let's say I created one of the 50 trucks, if I were to pull them from my database and then to see what their specialty is, what we would get would be non-existent. Now I can choose to show that on my website or not. And then if I wanted them to be able to update it, I totally could, right? I can update information very easily, which we'll get to. But yes, you would actually, after we do this, if there was 50, if I were to pull the truck specialty, that specific truck specialty, it would come up as non-existent as the value.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Quite a bit in chat. Let's see, let's go through this. Mark asked, so if we would have put default equals non-existent before we attempted to migrate, would it have thrown an error? No, it would not have. So if you had put default, right? It's like this, option 2. If I would have said like default like that, then by default, if there wasn't something that was input there, that's what it was saying, that I could go back and put it as a default, or I could put it as nullable. So if no age, for a new or existing, then it'll be set to 200. So anything that existed, if I would have just done this initially, instead of having to go in and then, get an option 1 or 2, if I would have just done this, then all of the ones would have said non-existent by default. Any other reading through? So just by providing a default, we would have avoided the error. Yes, or making it null equals true, meaning it's okay if nothing's there. It's okay for them to not have a specialty. That's fine. They don't have to have that. So those are my 2 other ways I could have done it. This is a great point. Just everything's broken and I have no options left. If your database or things or migrations are just beyond fix, you can delete these 3 things, but it will delete all of your data. If you've created 100 users, it will delete all of them. My encouragement, don't let it get to that point, right? Deleting databases is not a common thing in companies, right? They don't just go like, we'll just delete it all and then start over. Like, companies are crucial. And so our data is crucial. So please make sure that you are, doing everything you can in this as well. Cool. Let's cruise, because let's move a little bit forward. Now, we created this model. Now there's a way we can do this. I'll show you how to do it through a form, but there's a way, kind of just as you are beginning, there's a way that we can implement and put stuff into our database without having to create a form and do templates and do routes and a whole bunch of stuff. And that is what we call the Django shell. Now the shell is a way that I can actually write Python code. And we can do different things, right? We've talked about that, where you can just, if I just type Python shell, then it can bring up a Python thing, and then I can do 4 + 4, it's a quick calculator, all of that good stuff. But this Python managed py shell will allow us to now start interacting with our actual Python program, with our actual Python project or Django project. So in order for me to do that, I'm here, I'm going to type this, but I'm going to say Python manage.py shell. And as you can see, now I'm in this interactive console. I've got the 3 arrows. That is a great sign that, hey, things are working. I'm in my shell. Now I'm working with my actual data in this project, right? I'm working within this database. If I want to do something, if I want to create something, if I want to retrieve something, I can do that here. Now, just know, I have access to everything within my program here, but the life of variables, not like model creations, or not actually something in my database that is persistent, but the life of variables, right? Let's say I'm creating truck1 equals, and I'm doing some sort of query. Once I exit this shell, that gets forgotten, right? So I can't go back into my shell and then say truck1 something. It doesn't know what truck1 is. It will only exist within this shell right here. So I can, I have to, from main.models import truck. So in order for me to start manipulating and doing my truck, right, and actually doing some stuff, I have to first bring it in. I've got to first import to give access to my truck. If I don't do that, then it is not going to work. Does that make sense? And just as a reminder, the shell command, the shell assignments, basically what you need to do is just do your shell stuff, take this, copy, and then paste it in a TXT and then upload that file as that. Okay. So we're talking about the shell. Now, in my shell, I can actually start doing what we call CRUD commands. Now, this will be something, and this is probably the last thing we'll talk about today. And then we'll get into one-to-many and maybe many-to-many next week, but we'll talk about one-to-many and then we'll link it all together. But CRUD commands is where I expect and hope you will spend a ton of time, because this is going to be basically everything we do within Django. Everything in the backend that we do is going to be this, right? Using these CRUD commands, these database queries are going to be huge. Now, remember, I said an ORM will actually write SQL code for us. These commands are the built-in methods that write that code for us. So instead of having to say in this table, I want you to retrieve the truck that has the ID of 1 or where truck equals 1, all that SQL code, I can actually just say class name objects get. So this is something that you should you should get to know every single one of these. We're not, actually we will be updating, we will be deleting. Displaying records is great. Yeah, all of these. I would encourage you to get to know all of them. Even this order by will be great if you're trying to go for a black belt. These queries are going to be some of the harder things for you to do. Now, the CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete, right? If I want to create an instance, if I want to read a specific instance, if I want to update a specific instance or delete a specific instance, that is what we call a CRUD command, and they are associated with our models. Awesome. So I now have imported truck into my shell. Let's go ahead and create my first truck. Let's see. I can't remember. We did so many things. It was a terrible idea. That's okay. Okay. So we can see, before we jump in, if I want to create something, I first put the class name. In this case, it is going to be truck. Dot objects, that is something that is built in. Yes, it does need to be there. And then the keyword is create. Then in parentheses, I write the field name. Now, field 1 is the name of my attribute, meaning name. Field 2, slogan. Field 3, food type. It's and so on and so on and so on. Now, created at and updated at, we don't have to do it automatically. That's what this auto now automatically does that for us. So we just have to worry about these ones right here. And we have to worry about the specific fields that they are. So if it is a char field or a text field, it has to be a string, right? And if it's an integer field, it's just a number, and a Boolean field obviously is a Boolean. So let's go ahead and create our first truck. Let's do this. I've got truck dot objects. Can you guys see that fine, or do you need it increased a little bit? You good? Okay. Truck.objects.create, where the name equals, what's our truck name? Tequila Trolley. Love that. Tequila. That is one name I do know well. Tequila Trolley, comma. Now it's got a slogan. Now these do have to match directly to my attribute names. Our slogan is what? Drink till you drop. Mark, you're just crushing it. Drink till you drop. Perfect. What else do we have? We've got a food type, star rating, expensive, and specialty. Okay. So I've got a food type. Food type's going to be Mexican, okay. I've got a star rating. Melissa, what do you think it should be rated?
With tequila, I would say a 5.
Yeah, Melissa, let's go. Okay, I got a star rating of 5. Now notice I just put a 5 because it is an integer, right? It's an integer field. It's not a string, so I have to put it as its specific data type. Is it expensive? Frank, what do you think? Is it expensive? You can't put depends. It is a Boolean, Frank. True. Okay, true. And then specialty. Jordan, what kind of specialty should I have? I spell it right. Shots. John put blackouts. A little bit more appropriate. Okay, so its specialty is blackout chicken tacos. Okay, so I've got my star rating. I've got everything. Now, once I click this, hopefully I don't get an error. If I just get the 3 dots that says, okay, everything is created. So let's do this. Okay, so I've now created truck object 1. Perfect. Now, this is my first truck object. That is awesome. Now, let's say I wanted to retrieve that, something I should have done right here, is I can say something like this, truck 1, this is an arbitrary name, equals. Now, let's say I wanted to get a specific truck. Well, we know that this is my first truck, so it's gonna have an ID of 1. So what I can actually say is I can say truck dot objects dot get. Where? And this get is a really, really awesome tool for your CRUD commands, but there is a catch to it. Get will only retrieve one thing. So if you were to say, you know, truck.objects.get where name equals John, there can only be one or else it'll mess up. It doesn't get a whole, like all the Johns out there. It can only be one. And if there's nothing in there, it'll also mess up. So make sure that get is something that we want to make sure that, you know, it is a specific thing, right? If it doesn't return anything, so if there isn't anything, like that's more okay. But we want to make sure that we are actually not getting a list. If you wanted to do that, there's a CRUD command for that. So let's say I wanted to get all of the trucks with, you know, the name John or whatever, then I would use this filter. Filter gets any records matching the query provided, gets the record in the table with the specified ID. This method will throw an error unless only and exactly one record matches the query. So if you do have more than one John trucks, then this will give us an error. If you think, oh, there might be more than one, use filter. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and get it. Get where the ID. Go ahead.
So if this get will get any value, but only one of that value, as long as you specify that the value equals and whatever was stored in that value.
Yeah. So what I can do with get is I can say, it's basically if I wanted to get a user by an ID or an email, right? I can pass in where the email equals, you know, wcalhoun@codingdojo.com. Now, whenever we are doing database queries, we've talked a lot about the unique identifier is the ID. So 95% of the time, I'm going to use get where the ID equals something, right? Maybe the user that's in session, et cetera, et cetera. But I can do get on where specialty equals blackouts or whatever, right? It doesn't matter as long as it is a attribute and then the value I want to basically compare it to. So what this is doing is this is creating a variable called truck1, and its value is going to be the object, right? The dictionary of this truck that's ID equals 1. So when I do this, perfect. So now I can say truck 1 dot name is Tequila Trolley. So in my database, I have now got at the ID of 1, I've got a truck, and I can now do some stuff with its data, right? So I can say truck 1 dot what do we call it? Food type. It will return Mexican. Truck 1 dot specialty. Blackout chicken tacos. So now I have created a truck within my database. I've set it equal to this variable. And now I can do something with it. I can retrieve and say, okay, well, now I have access to this entire object where I can call its name, the key, right? The key of name, and it gives me the value of Tequila Trolley. I can see the key of food type, it gives me the value of Mexican, and the key of specialty, and the value is blackout chicken tacos. So now within my database, there is a truck called the Tequila Trolley at an ID of 1. Does that make sense? We have created our first thing within our database.
I have a
Will,
question. Oh, go ahead.
so when you created that, are those
Mhm.
like, are those fields keyed, or do you have to put them in the order of the model?
I believe they are keyed. Let's try it. Yeah. So I'm going to put expensive equals true above, but I believe it's keyed, so you don't have to do that. Okay, what should this next one be? So that way we can know.
That's a 3-star.
3-star for sure. What should its specialty be? Or what's the name of the truck should we create? The Whiskey Wagon. I love that. You guys, Tequila Trolley and Whiskey Wagon. You guys are hilarious. Okay, Whiskey Wagon. Its slogan is
I don't remember.
I don't remember. I love that. I don't remember. REMBER. Food type is what?
Tex-Mex.
Ribs. Ribs. I like ribs. That just feels like I'm feeling like a Wyoming feeling, you know. Its specialty should be ribs. Okay, so I'll say blackout baby back ribs. Everything's ribs. Okay. So we have changed, just to kind of do this, we're creating another one, but I want to call this truck 2 so I don't have to do the get. Because I can also say this, truck 2 equals, right? And then now it's the value of whatever is this, whatever this equates to, right? So truck 2 equals the Whiskey Wagon, who's got a slogan of I don't remember. The food type is ribs. It is expensive. It's got a 3-star rating, and his specialty is blackout baby back ribs. So now when I do that,
will the truck 2 always have to be capitalized?
the which one? Truck 2?
1, truck 2. Yes.
Nope, it does not. That is an arbitrary name. So if you guys wanted to call it unicorn, you totally could. I just call it truck 1 and truck 2 because that makes most sense for this. But it is just any sort of name. It could be the letter H, which isn't a great naming convention, but you get what I mean. It can be anything. So
No, I'm just asking, does it have to be like capitalized, the letter
nope,
T? Oh, okay,
it does not.
thanks.
Okay, so we got here, we didn't get an error, which usually is fine. So let's say truck 2 dot name, Whiskey Wagon. So it does look like that is keyed. It is not in a specific order. Remember, we changed the expensive false. We changed the order of this and the star rating, and it still works. Right, so I can say truck 2 dot star rating is 3. So now in my database, I have got 2 trucks. And I can start doing some stuff with this data. Now, one thing I do want to point out is, so that is how we do it in the shell. And I'm going to take, if it's okay with you guys, I really do want to just, I prefer to do some sort of, be a little bit longer today, but I think it'll help you as you guys are moving forward. But that's it in the shell. And just as a reminder, you will just take this, copy it, paste it in TXT. That's how you do the shell assignments. But now, even outside of that,
I have a quick question.
Okay.
Does this that you just wrote in the shell, does this show up in Visual Studio as well, or no?
Mhm. Yep. Because I did the Python manage PY shell, I am in my project and I am manipulating the data within my database. So we have just seen, let's actually, that's a great question. Let's actually show how that works right now. So we've seen that we can retrieve something from my database. So let's say I wanted to create a context for this index, right? And we're going to render something. And let's say return render. Let's say index.html, and then I've got a context. I just want to do this that way you guys can really feel like, okay, I've got a good understanding. Okay, so what if I wanted to say truck and I wanted to show this a specific truck. If I wanted to show a specific truck, does anybody remember? I did it in the shell. What would I do? If I wanted to show the second truck, the whiskey wagon, what would I put here? You guys can unmute. Not truck name. Remember, in my shell, truck name exists. The minute I exited that, truck 2 is gone. The variable of truck 2. Now that truck is still there, but truck 2, that variable is gone. But Nathan's got the right idea. I can say truck dot objects dot get, where what am I doing? ID equals 2, yeah. Now, before, whenever I did my shell, what did I have to bring in? Does anybody remember? When I was looking at my shell, I had to bring in from blank import blank. So here, I actually have to give it my model. So I can say from import truck. So saying from here, import truck. So now when I use truck, I actually have access to this model. So perfect. I've imported truck. I have a context where the key of truck is equal to the value that is returned with this query. And then I'm going to render this on my index.html. See what I mean? So here in my main, I need a templates, right? Templates. Then my templates, I need my index.html, right? Come here and I say food truck. Perfect. I can have an H1 where I have got this value in my context. Let me put this side by side. I've got this value in my context at the name of truck, and it is this object. Now, if I want to reference that, I will say truck. Now, just as a reminder, this truck is this right here, this exact name. But then I can also say dot name. Oops. Truck dot name. Now this is going to take the name of the object here. So now if I show this, it should show whiskey wagon. Now before I run this, are there any questions?
This gets very complex. So what about I have to retrieve data from multiple table or you call classes here? How do you do that?
What do you mean multiple table? I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
Sometimes you have to join two tables, right? And then get some values.
Oh, we will get to like, you mean like a relational, like a one-to-many and a many-to-many? We'll get to that next Wednesday, on Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah, this is basically, I just want to retrieve some sort of data and I want to show it on my actual website.
I see. Thank you.
So, Will, do you always like give value to your attribute through the shell, or you could even do it in VS Code?
You can do it in VS Code. So I could say something like this. Truck2 equals truck dot objects dot get, where the ID equals 2, right? And that will create a value of this, rather than get me that specific object. And then I can just say this. Oh my gosh. Or say something like this. Truck2, right? Because the value of truck2 is this query database. Now it's a little bit more efficient just to put that in there, but that's okay. You could do that same thing. This could be unicorn, and then truck would be equal to unicorn.
Yeah, so I was saying like the way we give our truck name, like if it's expensive, like those. Do we always?
Oh yeah, we will absolutely create. We will absolutely create within VS Code.
You can.
Yeah, you don't need to be in the shell. We will on Wednesday. We're going to create from a form. We will create something in my database.
Like VS Code.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Maybe it is. Is this wrong, Mel, Aaron? Am I pulling it in correctly? For models?
According, I mean, from what I've used and what we do, or what I'm used to, we do from this folder models, but you can do, there's various ways. It's you're just asking it to look on the level, the same folder level.
Yeah,
so.
on this specific level, which it is.
Yeah. And I think there is some kind of rule about it
but
looking.
You're right, because it's not going to have truck. It doesn't know what truck is.
Okay.
Wow, what did I do wrong here? Because you're right, what it would look for is a file name of truck.py. Great catch. Okay. Oh, what the heck? So I guess I could say truck.models import. Okay, what am I? Wow, I'm very confused from models. Oh. Is it dot models? Wow, why am I brain farting here? Is that it? Yes.
Yes.
Sorry about that, guys. So instead of the dot, I did need to designate models so it could go in my models and then import my trucks. Cool. Okay, so now if I were to show this, is that looking at your file models, which is in that level? Yes, so it is looking at this models and then it's saying go into there and get truck. Give me just 1 second, guys. I'm so
I was just gonna say, since Will stepped away, that once we start putting together the URLs.py, we'll be importing the views, and that import looks a lot like from this folder, which is the .import views, and you're just importing all, and that imports the entire views.py, which it wants it to look to connect to your URLs. But I might be getting ahead here.
Yeah, just well, no, we've been importing views.
Okay, I was just saying that's the syntax you were using did look a lot like the URLs.py import.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so right now, just to reiterate what we did, we created a model, right? I then in my views created this method called index, and we know that my URLs automatically goes there. So once I do localhost 8000, it'll go there. And what this index does is it retrieves from my database the object, the truck object that has the ID of 2, and it puts it into context. Now remember, context is a way that we can show something onto our HTML. And the way we do that is we say the key name, which here is truck. And then when I say this dot, I have access to all of the attributes of that object. I have access to its ID all the way through updated at. So I can say dot updated at, dot created at, specialty, expensive, ID, name. I can have any of those. Here, I just want to show the name for right now. So what I can do is I can say this. So now when I say localhost 8000, I get Whiskey Wagon. Hey, it worked. We went into my database. We grabbed a truck object, an instance of a truck that's ID equal to. I put it in context and said, now I want my front end to be able to have access to this, to be able to use this. I put in a little dictionary. And then I was able to call it. If I wanted to call PTAC, that's got truck. Now, note, it does matter the capitalization, but if I want a truck specialty, I could do that. And it says blackout baby back ribs. So this is a full stack application. We have built, congratulations, you just built your first full stack application. We have created a database. We've created an entire backend. Right, we went into the shell and created some stuff, and I'll show you on Wednesday how we do that through a form in our views. But then now we're actually from our database, we are retrieving a bit of information and we are changing it up. If I were to change this one thing to 1, save, and I refresh this, it changes to Tequila Trolley because that was the first one. That's the ID of 1. With blackout chicken tacos, and its name is Tequila Trolley. Does that make sense? I'm done lecturing. So if there's any questions, now is the time, my friends. Jordan, I would say no. A model is not a database. A database consists of certain databases, I would say, consist of models, right? From its most basic form, a database is a collection of models, but a model is not a database. A model is just a template that if I want it's a class, right? If I want to create a bunch of trucks, it's just my template that I can just slap in my database. And then when my user creates something, it has a template of what to do. But a model is not a database, but a database consists of models.
But by importing the models, that allows us, that's basically the link between our HTML or our index and the database. Like we have to go via the models file.
Yes. Mm-hmm. In order for me to do this query, this is what we call a database query. Because again, in the backend, Django is saying, go to the truck model where ID equals 1, right? It's doing the SQL code in this query. This is what we call a database query. In order for me to have access to truck.objects, I have to then import truck. If I don't import truck, it doesn't know what truck.objects is. So this line's not there. It does, see, you can see a squiggly bracket, undefined. It says I have no idea what truck is. But I can say import truck. And now it's saying, oh, okay, you must mean the truck model. Oh, it has a dot objects. Great. Then I can do this database query in order for this part to run. And then in order for that part to run, once that runs, it then gives access via this context to my front end.
Could we not just put truck.objects.get in the context dictionary and just get rid of truck2?
100% you
Or,
could.
okay.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I was just showing that because Frank asked. But yes, you could absolutely do this. That's what I had initially.
Okay, that's right.
Yep.
Is there a scenario in which you'd want to have separate variables called outside of context, or is it generally just better to make it concise and keep it in the dictionary?
It would be totally dependent. I mean, not off the top of my head that I can really think of, but this, I personally like doing this more, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just because it is like safe space, right? You're not doing another variable declaration.
Yep.
What
Yeah.
if we're waiting for a post?
What do you mean?
Like, so above context, if we were trying to get a post from the user to get their ID or a username that's associated with an ID, and then we can go back and fill in our context with the user input.
Well, remember, a
So
context will never exist up on a post request. Because remember, the point of a context is to give it to my HTML, and that is when we render. But on a post, we always redirect. So in order for this method to be even run, yeah, it'll totally be a different method. We'll have, we would, in that case, we would have something like a def create, right? That takes in a request. And then this is where I, I'm going to put pass here, but this is where I would create my user. And then after I'm done creating my truck, I will redirect to my index. And maybe I'll keep track of that ID if I want, totally could. And then I could say, the truck with the ID that was just created, something like that. But you will always, your post and your context will never be in the same method ever. Because your post will always redirect and context only exist on a render. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect. Any other questions, my friends?
So if you wanted to print all of the trucks, do you have to like make a separate variable for each one?
Yeah, so what you could actually do is I could say this. I could say all trucks. Glad you asked this. Then I could say truck dot objects dot all. And this will retrieve all of the, I gotta have a comma here, sorry. This will retrieve all of the trucks within my database. So then what I can do, and this is the last thing I promise, is in my Django templating engine, I cannot just say, I can't just say truck, right? Because it's an object, I actually have to go into that specific object, right? This dot all gives me a list of objects, a list of dictionaries. So it'll be like truck 1, truck 2, truck 3, whatever, but it's the actual object itself. I can't just print that. What I can do is I can say, I was going to save this for later, but we can do it. I'm going to put unicorn just to show you that it doesn't mean anything, but this word is arbitrary, and all trucks. This is me iterating through the entire list of trucks. I personally like to end my for before I do anything because I will always forget it. But now I am iterating, and unicorn is basically my I, right? It is a way that I can keep track of where I'm at in my list. So what I can say is unicorn. I'm gonna create a p tag that is unicorn. Unicorn dot food. Did we say food type? I think we did. So now what this is doing is this will create a truck name of my truck with the ID of 1, the specialty of my ID of 1, and this will iterate through every single truck and just print off their food type. So if I go check my server, it's still running, we're crushing it, and I refresh this, now it's Mexican and ribs. Remember, the first one was Mexican, then ribs. I could say, you know, get rid of this, don't even use it. So now every single time I can do this. Tequila trolley, Mexican. Whiskey wagon, ribs. And now I'm iterating through my data. Great questions, friends. I wasn't planning on going this in depth. I was gonna do this, but since you guys are asking, I'm more than willing to do that. Any other questions?
So I don't know, I might go too far as usual, but from a practicality standpoint, when you're doing something, say you have a website that your main index lists all the food trucks in your database. Each name is rendered as a link. You click that and then it would render, say you have a single template just to display all the information about that food truck, as opposed to having a different HTML per truck.
Yep.
Is that's essentially
this is
the usefulness
that is what
of
we're doing. Yeah, we're going to be doing that exact thing. Like that is
Now,
the belt exam, basically.
Okay. Is there a way though, however, like say somebody wants to bookmark just that page for that specific truck, where when you make that link request, the URL is actually the ID of the truck?
That's exactly what you're going to be doing. Your URL will be your ID every single time. And if somebody wanted, so that's how we will be iterating for that. We will be having like truck/ID in my URLs, and that URL will actually pull up that specific truck. With that is probably next week or the week after, probably next week. But yes, that's exactly what we're going to be doing. Through my URL, I will be passing the ID of that specific truck. And if I wanted to save it, then I could throw it in session, or I could actually create some sort of value, right, for my user. But yes, we could do that. That's exactly what we're going to do. Just like this, right? I can now have one template for a truck name, and all my stuff is on this end, right? I just designate which truck I want to use over here. And then this is just going to have, well, this is the unicorn name, but when I first initially had truck name, all I did was change the ID, right? And I got a different truck, same template. So we're gonna have one template for all of our HTML, and then we can piece little bits of data together. So yes, John, exactly what you said we will be doing. Make sense?
Yeah, I just wanted to put it in, kind of frame it out.
Yeah, no, I love the thought process. And that's what, if we're looking at the assignments, when we start getting to, like, this is why I love this one, but books and authors is that you can create a book, you can create an author. If I click on this book, so you can either have the view or just make this an A tag. When I click on it, it goes to that specific book's page. Or this author, I can go to that specific author's page. It's one template, but I'm just querying the database for my specific author based off of what my user clicks.
So that would be like, then in the path, it would be where it has the integer colon ID, like book
Yep.
/ integer colon ID.
So you're just saying expect some number, and then when they click in there, I'll probably have a hidden field, right? That pushes that value. Or just there's ways, yeah, whenever I'm iterating through. So like I can do this, right? So not only can I iterate through here, but I can say p tag is unicorn.id. So if I come here and I save and I refresh, now I have 1 and 2. Right? Hold on, give me 1. Sorry, I'm house sitting and the dog needed out, and then it's super hot, so it needed back in. But yeah, so here, right, I've got my ID, but I could do something like this, right? So I could actually just do where the href equals, right? Something like this. That says, you know, unicorn dot rating, no, dot star. No, that'd be confusing.
Just dot name.
Yeah, name. I just already used name, but yes. So now when they click on this, they see Whiskey Wagon, but if I hover over, you can see it's localhost 8000/2 in the bottom left. Yep. Way to think ahead though. Any other questions before I stop the recording? I really enjoy these classes. I know they go for a long time, but I try to be as in depth because you guys are definitely paying for this. So I don't want to be the type that's like, we're going to be here for an hour and then you're done. Like, let's dive in, you know?
The more the merrier,
You
man.
guys,
Appreciate
yeah,
everything.
the more, yeah, dude, the more you guys, yeah, you guys pay a lot for this. And so I always want to be the type that's like, yeah, I'm willing to go 2 hours versus like, no, because I've seen and known people that are the opposite way. So any other questions?
If we wanted
Cool.
to look for like supplementary like info or resources or something besides like documentation and what's on the Learn platform, is there a place you would recommend to do that?
On what?
Like the stuff like Django stuff we've been doing, like ORM database, whatever.
I would say documentation is
Probably
a
the best.
really hard, yeah, it's a hard thing to start reading, but reading documentation is part of being a developer. And I know that like really sucks. Like, if we're just being honest, documentation is so boring, but it will be part of your job. So I would encourage you, because I'm with you. I'm like, no, give me a little YouTube video, give me like a little snippet and I'm good. I would say documentation is important. Feel free to definitely do things like just keep searching. Medium is one of my favorite just websites. Personally, I think it's like $5 a month for the premium to get like unlimited access. But I look at it almost every day, and it's just a great thing. I think I sent you guys a Medium article today, but it's just a great way to learn just things about code. So like 12 conventions for writing clean code. And I might read this. And sometimes it's kind of trash, but it's a 5-minute read. And so I'm looking and like, okay, I can do something like this, or, I don't know, like you can read certain things like that. But for the actual Django stuff itself, everybody's different. And so and even every program's different. And so I would say documentation is really important. As you guys get more and more, there's one thing on the Learn platform, not one thing, but the, is it Django Extras? Django Extras, there's so much to Django to do. So like Django admin's a great thing and it won't take you very long to go through. But there's a ton more on Django in here. Django forms. We're going to do it the long way, but here's a quick way to do forms and flash messages using APIs, class-based views, authorization, stuff like that. So I would say the platform's great. Documentation is your best. And then YouTube, there's a guy named Tech with Tim who does a lot of Django stuff. So if you go to YouTube, I really like Tech with Tim. He just builds a lot of fun stuff that you can sit and build and you might not actually know what's going on, but Tech with Tim. But even though that's the case, like you can still build cool things and then you slowly will learn to be like, well, wait, what's a serializer in Django? I don't understand. There you go. But he's great. He's like a young dude. He's like 21, I think, worked for Microsoft. Now he does a bunch of stuff, but there's one where he does Django and React together and makes like a cool app. You can make like a voice assistant tutorial, Django tutorials. Here's another, like here would be a great one. I'll put it here in the chat for you guys. Cool. Anything else, friends? I know that some of you guys, I will just preemptively say this. I just put that in the chat for you guys. If you guys get an academic AIP, I noticed today on one of a student who had emailed me and said, hey, I've done everything. And then oh, sorry, this is awkward. So they've done everything, but then my database wasn't reflecting that. So if that's the case, will you just actually shoot me an email so I can go in and look at it, because that means that there's a bug in our platform and I can document it. So if you do get that,